Welcome to Life Matters. I'm your host, Brendan O'Connell. Well, over the last couple of years, we've brought your attention to an organization that had been funding communism and contraception and abortion, all within the Catholic Church, known as the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. And we've also covered similar activities going on with Catholic Relief Services. And today, we're going to talk with someone who's quite knowledgeable about all this. His name is Michael Hichborn. He's with the American Life League. He's a host of the American Life League show. I believe it's a television or radio show. And he's been doing a lot of homework over the last few years to do the deep digging on who these organizations are and what their connections are. And are they being true to the principles of the Catholic Church? Well, welcome, Michael Hichborn.
Thank you, Brendan. It's always a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, Michael, one of the things that I was wondering, we unfortunately had technical difficulties. We couldn't get up the video that you have. It was very interesting. And it had to do with something called Caritas International and the World Social Forum. Perhaps you could give us some background about this. How does it all relate and to the Catholic Church and also to the pro-life movement, of which this show has its main functions and main purpose?
Sure. I'll start by giving a little bit of background on what Caritas Internationalis is. It's a confederation of about 162 Catholic relief and development type agencies, like Catholic Relief Services, Catholic Charities USA, Development and Peace up in Canada. And they work together in over 200 different countries, territories around the world, and it is the social action arm of the Catholic Church. It's run out of the Vatican. Its current president is Cardinal Maradiaga. So Caritas Internationalis is the largest and most influential social justice organization in the entire Catholic Church. So what we discovered is that Caritas is on the governing body of an organization called the World Social Forum. Now, the World Social Forum is a communist, pro-abortion, pro-homosexual organization. They have meetings around the world every year with about 150,000 participants. They have several different organizations that participate in the World Social process and the forum and everything else, but they go marching through the streets carrying the big red communist flag with the hammer and sickle and the yellow star. They go marching through the streets with banners of Karl Marx, who wrote Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto. They had Hugo Chavez give the keynote one year, where he cited Lenin, he cited Karl Marx, he cited Joseph Stalin, talked about the need for spreading communism. And then, of course, the pro-abortion element throughout the 2012 or 2013 World Social Forums, they've paraded around these crucifixes that don't have the Christ on the crucifix, but a pregnant woman. And the moniker is that she is crucified by fundamentalism, basically saying that she's on the cross because we won't let her abort her child. Mm-hmm. So this is what the World Social Forum is. And the very fact that Caritas Internationalis is on the governing body of this organization is not only mind-boggling, but completely and totally unacceptable.
Well, how can the popes? I mean, haven't the popes in the past condemned, for instance, communism and of course abortion? How do they get away with it? Or is there something that we can do, or can a pope, or is it the cardinals and bishops that really wield the power that this organization remains a viable organization? Inside, or just, is it outside the Catholic Church, or is it inside the Catholic Church? What is the exact
I'd say that it's inside the Catholic Church, and quite honestly, what a lot of it has to do with is the control of information. I think that too often Catholics in the pews assume that, well, if it's going on in the Catholic Church, then the Pope must know about it. That's far from the truth. The Pope only knows about what information he is handed. And if there are cardinals who are in charge or involved with entities and alliances that are completely antithetical to church teaching, then the chances are they're not reporting that information to the Pope either. And so when we release reports on this kind of thing, our hope is that the outrage of the pew-sitting Catholics who are asked to give donations to social justice agencies will rise up and say, we will not support something like this, which is why at the end of our report, we ask everybody who's a Catholic to write to Cardinal Maradiaga and ask him to please disaffiliate from the World Social Forum. There's no excuse for Catholics participating in this thing at all.
And how long have they been participating in this World Social Forum?
Since the very beginning of the World Social Forum in 2000. So 14 years.
14 years. Is it a growing organization, or are they able to get monies from the Catholic Church to, carry on what they'd like to do, which is...
You bet. In fact, I've seen donations from Development and Peace up in Canada going straight to the World Social Forum. I know that Caritas Internationalis has participated in certain special collections from the World Social Forum. So yeah, there is a transfer of funds, and it's very difficult to know exactly how much, because the reports and the documentation being kept by the World Social Forum isn't exactly, it's not well represented in their public documents, and I think that they would probably rather keep a lot of that off the public record. So it's difficult to know exactly how much, but yes, I do know for a fact that Caritas and Development and Peace, at least, have given money to the World Social Forum.
I see. And is it thousands of dollars or millions of dollars, or?
At least what's reported is in the thousands, but there's no way of knowing the full context, knowing the full amounts that they've been giving.
Well, if someone were to excise or say this organization, we're going to stop supporting it, where does it have to come from? Does it come from the cardinal level, or does it come from the Pope himself?
Well, Caritas is under the direct control of the Vatican. So the cardinal who's in charge of Caritas is, as I said, Cardinal Maradiaga. Now, a couple of years ago, Caritas got into some hot water because they have a president, which is usually one of the cardinals of the Vatican, but then they also have what they call a secretary general, who is somebody that is elevated from amongst the ranks of all of the various Caritas affiliates. Several years ago, it was a woman named Leslie Ann Knight. She was the head of the Secretary General of Caritas, and it came to light that she was on the ground promoting the use of condoms and encouraging Caritas affiliates to spread the use of condoms in order to combat HIV and AIDS. And this was during the pontificate of Pope Benedict XVI, and so the kibosh was put on her leadership. She was removed from her position, and Caritas was forced to put in a new leader, a man whose name is Michel Roy. I have discovered some very unsettling things about Michel Roy. I'm not going to reveal too much right now, but what I will say is that in the coming months, there will be a report that illustrates just how deep the level of participation with the World Social Forum, the European Social Forum, and a bunch of other nasty affiliations really goes.
Well, the whole concept in the Catholic Church, when you hear the two words social justice, you think leftist, liberal. Is this just taken to the on the worldwide scale? And why is it that people of social justice want to promote contraception, abortion, homosexuality, and communism?
Well, I think that a lot of it really is kind of an infiltration job that was done on the church. If you look back at the 60s and 70s, it was the work of Saul Alinsky and his alliances with the church in Chicago that led to the rise of the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. Alinsky was one of the driving factors behind the creation of the Campaign for Human Development. And in fact, the reason I discovered the World Social Forum at all is because I was investigating a bunch of CCHD grantees that were participating in what's called the U.S. Social Forum. These grantees took place in the one that took place in Atlanta, Georgia in 2007, and also the one that took place in Detroit in 2010. And the U.S. Social Forum is a more local application of the World Social Forum. It was a huge event, and we found a whole bunch of CCHD grantees participating in the U.S. Social Forum. And when I was like, well, what's the U.S. Social Forum? They said, well, we're part of the World Social Forum. And I said, well, what's the World Social Forum? And that led to deeper discoveries of involvement by Catholic entities with this whole entire process. Now, as to the ideologies and why they're supporting communism and social why the social justice seems to be so linked with communism, contraception, abortion, it all comes down to the heresy of modernism. And that includes things like materialism, syncretism, the idea that all religions and beliefs are the same, so you don't really have an urgency to convert anybody. And, what this comes to is that they believe that they can create an earthly utopia by using the church instead of bringing people to the church so that they can find salvation.
Wow. Well, can you give us an idea of some of the grants that these people get? Does Caritas International give grants to Catholic Relief Services?
No, I've not seen any exchange of money from the top down in this regard. In fact, I think that CRS and the other members of Caritas pay dues into Caritas Internationalis. Now, finding anything out about the way they spend their money or who they give their money to is a little difficult because they're a foreign entity. They don't have to file tax forms with the U.S. government. So the only reported financial numbers that I see from Caritas comes from Caritas's own website, and it's not really spelled out very well. So I don't know if they're giving money to anybody or if they're giving out grants. I've not seen any evidence to that.
Do they take up a collection each year? For instance, I know the campaign for the Catholic Campaign of Human Development, I believe in the month of November, takes up a collection. And I know that some dioceses don't do it anymore because they've been found out.
Sure.
But how is that going? On that level? Are there fewer people contributing to the Catholic Campaign for Human Development or to Catholic Relief Services these days?
I do know that a large number of people have stopped contributing to either of those organizations because of the work that they do to fund agencies that are attacking the church. But as far as impact numbers are concerned, the fact of the matter is Catholic Relief Services gets so much more in the way of government grants that if people stop contributing to CRS, they're not really going to feel it. Well,
now didn't you say that the Catholics gave $64 million to Catholic Relief Services in recent times?
A little bit backwards. Catholic Relief Services gave $64 million in grants to organizations that were providing abortion, performing sterilizations, and distributing contraception.
Wow. Gee,
and that was just in 2012 alone.
Wow. What do you see as the remedy to right the ship? In other words, Catholic Campaign for Human Development. I had a Chicagoan on who's now retired, but she was around in Chicago when the Catholic Campaign for Human Development was started up, and I believe it was Cardinal Bernardine that was the catalyst behind the whole thing.
Sure.
I mean, Kathleen Sullivan believes that the campaign for Catholic Campaign for Human Development is basically a fraud, an affront organization, and that, you know, when she tried to get monies for pro-life activity, they were not forthcoming. They did finally give a little bit of money, but then they cut it off after a year or two. Is the pro-life movement, did they get any monies, do you know of, from like the Catholic Campaign for Human Development?
Well, I think every once in a while when the CCHD realizes that it's got a bloody nose, will do the best that it can to perform damage control and kind of clean up its image a little bit. And as an example, this year they gave out a large number of grants to crisis pregnancy centers. Now, I know that a lot of that is due to some positive influences that are present among some of these agencies, but I don't know how long that kind of approach will be sustained. It really all depends on what the bishops want funded ultimately.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that that if we got rid of the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, that would be a beneficial thing for the Catholic Church and for people receiving these types of funds?
I do, because when you look at the mission of the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, they don't give money to organizations that perform direct services. They don't give to soup kitchens. They don't give to homeless shelters. They don't give to organizations that are trying to do job training even. I mean, they talk about how they want to fight poverty, but those are ways of fighting poverty that are very, very effective. But instead of doing all that, they want to pay political agitators. And ultimately, when you look at what political agitators are all about, they're all leftists who are intent on making sure that what they call progressives, which used to be called communists, are elected.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
In fact, in 2008, after Barack Obama was elected, one of the largest network of groups that gets the largest amount of funds from the CCHD, called Gamaliel, had this huge rally called Realizing the Promise. And at this rally, they had Ralph McLeod, who is the executive director of the CCHD, and he gave a big speech. And the whole purpose of this Realizing the Promise thing was that now that Barack Obama is president, we're finally going to see some progress on these progressive fronts. And Ralph McLeod's speech was peppered with apocalyptic imagery saying, you know, we're going to see a new Jerusalem. We're going to see justice flowing through the streets like water, and we're going to see the lion lying down with the lamb, as if somehow Barack Obama was the Messiah.
Oh. What can the Catholic and the pew do to counteract this? Is it social justice or social injustice? What can they do to have an impact on righting the ship or making sure that, you know, what the Catholic Church believes in, it promotes and funds those types of things rather than things contrary that they have been doing in recent years?
Well, the first thing that they absolutely should do is pray and fast for the bishops and the priests in the church. Because without doing that, there's really no point in doing anything else. No amount of complaining, no amount of argumentation is going to convince them of anything. It has to be through the grace of God that our church is being guided in the right direction. So, first and foremost, praying and fasting for bishops and priests, that is essential. Secondarily, make known what is wrong with the social justice groups in the church. It has to be made public, because the people in the pews who are being asked to pay have a right to know where their money is going, and they also have a right to be upset if their money is being mishandled. and they have a right to deny funds as long as these social justice groups are giving money to aid and abet the enemies of the church. So, first, prayer and fasting for the bishops and priests. Secondarily, investigate and make it known. Make known what is out there. Make known what's going on. Tell your bishops and priests, and hold on to your funds until such time as they have shown fit to give the money to the right areas.
And do these liberal organizations need to fear the Catholics, that they might pull the purse strings away from them, or are they just happily going along, or merrily going along, thinking they're going to get funded ad infinitum?
I think it's a little of both. I think that organizations like the CCHD, they get a little bit upset and gun-shy whenever I release information about what they're funding, and so they do damage control right away. CRS absolutely does damage control right away. But at the same time, I think that they have a sense of arrogance when it comes to how well they believe they've pulled the wool over the bishop's eyes.
Well, you are going to be going into a new venture, doing investigative type of things. What does that entail?
Well, I am leaving American Life League at the end of the month. October the 31st is indeed my last day here. And from there, I am starting my own venture to conduct these kinds of investigations. I will be calling it the Lepanto Institute. The long name is the Lepanto Institute for the Restoration of All Things in Christ, but fear not to the print shops. We're calling it the Lepanto Institute for short. And from there, I will be continuing my investigations and actually broadening and deepening my investigations into the CCHD, Catholic Relief Services, Caritas Internationalis, and also various social justice agencies within other Christian denominations, such as the Lutheran Relief Agency and the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, because they're part of the problem too.
And are they promoting the same things that some of the organizations that the CCHD has been funding?
Absolutely. Yep.
They have.
Yep, absolutely.
And, well, you'll be a marked man then by these organizations, or when your name is bandied about, they'll quiver, perhaps, in fear.
Oh, I don't care what they think of me. Ultimately, all that matters is that the will of God is done, and that whatever it is that God asks me to do, that's what I do. That's all that matters.
Will you be in the Washington, D.C. area or elsewhere?
I will be in the state of Virginia.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, it's a beautiful state. I lived there 2 years when I went to Georgetown University. Well, Michael, we thank you very much for giving us an idea of this larger organization that is a social justice group. It's called the World Social Forum and then Caritas International. We appreciate your exposing them, because many in America, I had no idea they even existed myself, and I kind of try to keep close tabs on these types of things. Well, thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
You're most welcome. And we hope you'll find today's show to be unique, informative, content-rich, truthful, and thought-provoking. I'm Brendan O'Connell, your friend for life. We'll see you next week. Welcome to Life Matters. I'm your host, Brendan O'Connell. Today we have perhaps the foremost authority on the doings of what Planned Parenthood is really up to, and how they operate around the country, how they get into communities, into schools, into into pretty much all facets of our lives. And some of the dichotomies that they have, where they have more and more abortions, yet fewer and fewer facilities. How does that work? And we're going to ask today's guest. He's the vice president of the American Life League here in America, based out of Virginia. Well, welcome, Mr. Jim Sedlak.
Well, hello, Brendan. It's great to be here.
Jim, let me ask you, first of all, how is it that Planned Parenthood facilities are closing, or clinics are closing, yet they're opening other? Well, welcome, Lila Rose.
Thanks, Brendan, for having me on.
Lila, today we were going to look at the issue, and it's been spoken about on this show somewhat, but it has to do with sex selection. How did this come up or come onto your radar screen, sex selection? What is sex selection for our audience, and could you delve into that a little bit?
Absolutely. Well, right now we're missing over 100 million little girls in the world today, in countries all over the world, which has led to huge gender imbalances where there's more boys than girls, which leads to economic problems, which leads to huge social problems, spurs on sex trafficking, and so many other horrible things. And this is a problem not only in India and China and places like that in Asia, but it's also a problem here in the United States. And even in some parts of our country, like my hometown of San Jose, California, the Bay Area, some of the gender imbalances, so there's more boys than girls, are even more severe among some populations there than they are in China and in mainland China. So we're seeing this.
Well, welcome, Paul Rondeau. Paul, what is it that you perceive? If it's not the economy, then what do you perceive as this upcoming election? What is really important, and is it a dire situation?
Well, you know, let me just make this metaphor. You know, if we all had more coin in our pockets, but bars on our windows, would we be more free or less free? And this election has been focusing on something extremely important. That is the economy, jobs, social justice. I understand all of that. But while we've all been focused on that, and the GOP has refused almost to talk about anything else, I mean, I can talk to you about multiple bills protecting the family, protecting the preborn that have come and gone, protecting targeted abortions against female babies have come and gone, never got to a vote because they felt it was a distraction on